Morning, everybody. Hope you all are doing well. I think you guys can hear me okay. So welcome to our session. We're going to talk a little bit about kind of the journey to Fabric and how you would use your organization to kind of make that decision of choosing and modernizing your data platform. We've had a couple of people ask about if these slides are going to be available. I don't know if there's a mechanism through the conference, but if y'all send us a message through the app, then with your email address, we'll be able to share it that way. So with that, just to kind of introduce ourselves. So my name is Robbie Bodla. I'm a director with RSM in our data and AI practice, based in Orange County. Been kind of in this space for 20 plus years. I'm our industrials and manufacturing data and analytics leader. And Ryan?
Yep, and I'm Ryan Bogesser. I'm a supervisor on our DDS team out of Chicago. So I primarily function as a data engineer and end-to-end Azure platform developer. Also, just because we're at the Fabric conference, I have to plug the blog, thedataartdesk.com. If you're interested in checking out what I'm working on in Fabric, that's the place where I'm going to post that. So.
Hey everybody, this is Ajay Punyapu. I'm a director in our data analytics practice based out of our Virginia McLean office. Been with RSM for 5 years, been doing all things data for the past 20 years. Have experience designing, building, and implementing solutions. Whether it's in on-prem, Azure, Databricks, Snowflake, AWS, all platforms.
Okay, so just today for our objectives, we want to walk through a few different things. Is one, just the why. Why is this important? What are your business objectives and really your goals of trying to modernize your data platform? Then we're going to move on and talk about how to do that. How are you going to take a really structured, kind of measured approach to thinking about what's your next generation modern data platform going to look like? And then we're here at a Fabric conference, so we're going to talk about the what. We're going to talk about a lot of these challenges and consideration, and we're going to put them in the context of Microsoft Fabric, using kind of a few kind of examples that are representative of a lot of the clients that we're working with. So with that, this is our agenda. So kind of just to start with, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about really the why for modernization. We'll go through that structured decision-making process. Jay and Ryan are going to kind of apply that decision-making process with a few different case study examples. And then kind of we're going to end on sort of that end state Fabric architecture and give you guys a few key takeaways about Fabric itself. So with that. So kind of to start with, right, what's the problem? Is we've got way too much data. There's every system that we have, this isn't unique to any one organization. Every system that we have, every customer interaction that we make, we're creating more and more data. That is growing exponentially. We keep building more larger, complicated architectures, and our end users have a hard time getting to that. And that could be because either the data is not consistent, we have issues with access control, scalability, and performance of being able to access that data. All these things sort of come together into that problem of we have lots and lots of data, but we're kind of insight poor. If our end users can't access it, they can't make use of it. If you move on, Ryan. The other thing is really, we need to think about, so what do we need to do? Well, part of that is really modernizing our data platform. And so why do we need to do that? So as I mentioned, right, that we want to think about it from kind of a business perspective, right? That when we modernize our data platform, that helps us to accelerate our decision making, because we get to embed and analytics into and insights into our decision making process. When we have a modern data platform, we get to streamline our processes around how we ingest data, how we use data itself. It gives us the opportunity to start making use of big data. We've got lots of different streaming, all sorts of different kinds of data feeds that are coming into the organization with a modern data platform that allows us to actually make use of these. And this drives towards more self-service analytics, having our business be able to use it from more of a predictive and a prescriptive approach. And some of this looks like IT type of perspectives, but really what it leads to then, from a business perspective, when you're talking to your CEO and your CFOs and everything, what does this all do for us? It helps us increase revenue, helps us reduce our costs, right? We get to interact a lot better in a different way with our customers when we have access to this information. It's enabled better processes, we're reducing costs, and then with this, these kind of modern data platforms, this allows us to drive out new and more innovative data solutions and products that we can push out to the market. So all that sounds great, right? That's really easy to do. So you know what we should do? We should buy a tool, right? That'll make it easy, right? Everybody's got a tool. It's that, you know. So how do we choose that, right? If you look, this is just a small subset of every single, you know, of the vendors that are out there that are trying to solve this problem, right? And so, you know, with that, we have to really think about when we're making this decision. It's not just we just jump right into this decision. There's lots of different platforms that are out there in the marketplace. Everybody's going to tell you that our platform does it, this platform does it. We don't want to jump to any decisions, and we want to take, as I said, kind of a measured, structured approach to this process. So I want to walk into, and then Ajay and Ryan are going to go deep into this, but this is really kind of that overall decision-making process that you want to go through when you're trying to make this process, when you're trying to make this decision. Kind of starting from the beginning, kind of defining objectives and assessing this current state. And you can look at this, and some of you may go, well, that's really obvious. But you'd be surprised how many organizations don't really do this. They sort of jump ahead to, they might jump ahead and do a POC. Most of them kind of jump ahead to step 7 and 8, and they just say, let's just pick something, we'll get in there and start building something. They don't kind of take this, and then what you end up with is these really big, large, complicated architectures that we're seeing in our organizations. You're not gaining the value that we think we want, that we're hoping to get out of these systems. And ultimately, you're going to end up redoing this process 1 year, 2 year, 4 years down the road. If you don't kind of think about these in those terms of really defining your objectives, really kind of understanding what your current state is, where you want to go, and sort of assess it from that perspective. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan and Ajay, that they're going to kind of drill into this process, but more in the context of existing customers and in the context of that.
Yeah, before we get into this slide, you know, when Fabric was announced last year, you have seen a lot of interesting articles come out, a lot of POCs, ourselves, like, you know, internally within the organization, or like externally, like, you know, you've seen, you know, how do I migrate a Synapse dedicated pool into Fabric, right? How do I, you know, build an AI app using LangChain on Fabric? And there's so many interesting, you know, POCs that people have done, solutions that were created. But then we really started looking at, like, from a client perspective, from the lens of a client, to figure out, like, you know, what problems are they really having, and what are they trying to solve, and how do, like, you know, what kind of solutions, you know, should we even implement? What we have here is a current state architecture of one of our clients. They have and believe it or not, you know, it's a pretty common scenario, or like, you know, the same story across, you know, several of our clients. They have a lot of source systems generating data. There are a lot of integrations going on between the source systems. And, you know, they have siloed data solutions to create or handle a one-off scenario, which is not enterprise-wide, but, you know, a single use case. You have an investment in, you know, an Azure SQL database, or like a single managed instance to get data out quickly from your on-prem into cloud. And believe it or not, even in the days of AI, Excel is still the king, right? So a lot of data transformations occur in Excel. Your feeds coming in from your SMEs or your business users, and your analysts are spending time, you know, processing the data in Excel and, you know, producing the results in Excel to the senior management. And what that does, you lose the lineage. You won't be able to answer the question like, you know, how do you derive or how did you arrive at a number? When you try to trace it back, the lineage of it, you don't have it. Or like, you don't have, like, you know, the quality, you know, to be able to answer any of these questions. And a lot of the time of your analyst is being spent on processing the data, preparing the data rather than analyzing the results. So now, in this particular client and few other clients, we have some scenarios, specific examples of each of these clients, like, you know, what challenges did they have, and, you know, how did their journey onboard them onto Fabric, and what features within Fabric allow them to build those solutions within Fabric. Again, a current state profile of sort of our clients, right? So access to data is difficult. You know, it's either heavy reliance on IT to get data extracts out to share with the business users, or business users themselves have to log in, you know, either to the vendor portals or like in some of these source systems to get the data extracts out and share with the end users, so that, like, you know, they can bring all these results together, your actuals, your forecasts, your reference data, lookup data, massage all of that together, and then you build this data solution. So, and again, like you mentioned, you have one-off solutions that are built in some of the platforms, whether it's a SQL database or Snowflake, you have some solutions built out. And again, a lot of our clients have a very small IT teams, right? So they don't want to spend time on maintaining the infrastructure, upgrading the infrastructure, or spinning up the infrastructure. What they want to focus more on is like a SaaS application, a software as a service application, where you log in with your credentials using a single URL, and then you can do your end-to-end analytics. Right now, if you were to build a solution, your data extraction, whether it's Excel or like downloads, or even an ETL tool, you have to maintain your logins, your access, and all of that for that tool. Then you have your data processing. You need again access, ensuring the right people have access to the right data at the right granularity. And then again, for visualizations, again, access and security and controls. So SaaS is going to be like the preferred approach or solution or a platform for several of our clients as well. And there is appetite for advanced analytics. They want to do descriptive analytics. They want to be able to like predict machine maintenance, or and then they have all these different use cases, but then they don't have a platform to enable them to be able to get into those situations. Right?
Yeah, and so to kind of tie it all together, I think AJ has done a great job of just highlighting some of the challenges that you probably face at your organization, right? But it's hard to communicate that to the business and the value of the what the data platform is actually solving for without following that step-by-step methodology. And the first step to that is defining objectives. So when we think about defining objectives, this is really taking the problems that our organization faces and trying to solve that with data. So just for some brainstorming here, we've grouped up 4 generalized categories to take home back to your organization, so maybe start thinking about, right? So when we think about alignment with business objectives, that may be areas of our business that are not visible. There's inefficiencies there because we're not able to accurately collect data in an efficient manner. So we're missing opportunities to optimize there. We may also think about, if our organization wants to, has an initiative to become an AI-enabled organization, right? We need to have a data platform that's going to facilitate that. The next category, user needs and expectations. This is sort of tying that back to both the technical teams, but also the sub-functions within your organization, right? What skill set do our technical teams have? What are they going to be able to develop and deploy efficiently and consistently? But then also thinking about how the data platform is going to serve data to our different business segments. So making sure that that's kind of on the forefront of our mind for the why behind, why we're building out a data platform. Cost and resource efficiency is obviously a really, really big one, right? Making sure that the costs justify the means of implementing a data platform. What works, where can we sort of leverage existing infrastructure and technologies, and where do we need to optimize? And then ultimately, the future state data requirements. So, it's really easy to solve for the now, but it takes a little bit more thinking to solve for the future. So you need to be thinking about those future use cases while you're defining these objectives. So in the context of our case study, these are just some primary key solutions that we see with a lot of our customers. So data accessibility, ensuring that organizations, different business segments have access to the data that they need to effectively add value to the business. Data accuracy and data quality. I'm sure this is probably an issue at your organization. Inconsistency across numbers being brought to the table, data quality issues across the board, just due to manual processing and sort of these break-fix solutions. So really kind of thinking about, when in this specific use case, data quality and data accuracy is a really important factor for the objectives of the data platform. Enabling the advanced analytics, right? This is sort of the age of that. Advanced analytics is very hot in the market right now. So we need to build data platforms that are going to be able to support those types of workloads. So AI, advanced analytics, machine learning, we need a solution that basically solves for that. Increased scalability. So like Ravi said, data collection is only going to grow. So we need to have a solution that's going to scale with that. Overall size, but then also thinking about workloads. So during busy times of day, we're able to scale up, give more compute there. During the slower times, maybe scale down. Data and security with compliance. This is something that, to AJ's point, is something that is tough to administer. So this is something that our clients are wanting baked into their data platforms. This is not something that we want to administer in any way. And then ultimately, that big driving force of managing the cost and the performance, ensuring that those two kind of balance out at the end of the day. So when we take those defined objectives, now it's time, we've kind of got our goals set, and now generally the next step in the data platform decision-making process is to assess the current state, and I'm going to hand it back to AJ to cover some client use cases.
And this is a very important step as well, because this connects your current state with the future state. Identifying your strengths and weaknesses. What solutions do you have? Like, what skill sets do you have? Can all the current investments that we have, like the current source systems that we have, are they compatible with the new platform, with the new solutions? You got to consider all these factors. This has to be a very thorough exercise and an honest exercise to call out your gaps. Right? Do a fit gap analysis of what you have. Right? You don't want to make the same mistakes that you may be making in your current state. Right? You want to resolve those issues in the future state. Engage with the key stakeholders to identify those key use cases that you want to test out, you want to build out, and test if the new platform is working great for all the solutions, right? You want to get those, the key areas identified. Now, if you want to go to the next slide, again, this is a current state of another client that we have, right? Now, going back to the two clients that we talked about, in fact, there's actually one more, so 3 or 4 clients. So the first client that we saw earlier was a manufacturing client. Now, they have products that they manufacture and they sell to all the big retailers within the US. What the challenge they have is getting that sales and inventory data back from the retailers. It's not an easy task. Unless you pay for third-party providers, you cannot easily get data out from your Amazons or some of these other organizations unless you pay an extra cost to get that data. So the sales reps are tasked with the responsibility of bringing those extracts out once a week, send it to the analyst, and then they piece together all that information in Excel, in Access, and then they finally create those management dashboards that they send to the client, right? Now the challenges with that, again, a lot of manipulation, access to information, a week longer than it should, right? And it's not automated. So if they want to add more retailers to sell their products, now they have a challenge. They want to do demand planning. They want to know when to price out a promotion or when to launch a new product. They want to do all those demand plannings, but they don't have all the information at the right grain in the right location to be able to do all of those activities. And then there is the second client where there are a Dynamics FNSE client, and the current process right now is to get data out using the export to data lake. That gets the data out, but then that solution set is getting deprecated later this year. So how do we remediate that? For clients who are interested in that solution, who have to implement the solution, what is that roadmap going to look like? What are the options when that feature goes away and you want to build your custom applications outside your D365 using your D365 data? And we have 2 clients, again, tying back to the sales and inventory. They have over 20 plus ERPs, and by the time they receive all that, the inventory information from the controllers, that information is so delayed that they end up for all their manufacturing needs, they end up buying reactively all the raw materials that are needed to fulfill the orders rather than a proactive buying. That's a lot of expenses on their side. That's a use case that we help with them. It's a proactive, instead of doing a proactive buy, instead of leveraging or doing a vendor evaluation or leveraging the discounts sometimes that vendors offer or buying in bulk, they're buying reactively whenever they feel or they realize that inventory is on the low end, on the raw material side to manufacture the finished goods. That sale client also has an issue with sales. Very late in the game, they are capturing or realizing that the prices that they have for customers has not been changed for over a year, right? That's a loss right there. They want to have it parameterized where they want to be able to say, I want to see if I sold this product at the same price for the last 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, whatever the time frame is, and create a red flag right away in that process, sales process, very early in the game, so that it tells them you haven't changed the price for this customer in over a year or in that time frame. They also want to know that along with the price portion, if the contribution margin or the margins, through the sale, if that's going to meet the targets or not, right? And with these 2 flags, whenever the data raises those 2 red flags, they want to immediately address those cost factors. So they want to be able to change the cost on that product for that customer, so they can meet the targets as well as stop losing the revenue that they would have had by addressing it in the very early stages. They have done this analysis, but they get this data currently like almost a month after they have done this process. And the amount of money or revenue that they lost, when they have identified those red flags, it was enormous. So again, they wanted to jump into a solution that's very fast in analyzing those results, getting the data from those 20 plus ERPs into a common platform that they can quickly analyze, combined with those red flag scenarios. Then Ryan, if you want to move to the next slide. So now that you've defined your objectives, and then you've identified the key use cases that you want to address, the next step is, all right, what tools in the market allow me to build the solutions to address my particular use cases?
Yeah, and so I think the important thing here, is IT doesn't go at it alone, right? Ultimately this data platform is going to serve the full organization. So we need to have, C-suite buy-in, and we need to have stakeholder buy-in. So as we're going and meeting with vendors, as we're identifying, functionalities and, working with third parties to sort of get a second opinion, we just need to make sure that we're coming at it from a united front as an organization, because that's ultimately what's going to solve the problems of your organization with data, is if we come and we hear from them and apply that back to the data platform functionalities. So for the example that we have here, just through our customer case study, right? Ultimately, it's a Microsoft shop, so that was a big sort of playing field. They wanted to have a Microsoft product for their data platform. And what you'll see is there's a lot of overlap between these products, right? So when we look at Fabric, when we look at Databricks, they both are aimed at unifying and centralizing data, ultimately. Increasing quality with the different data governance components that are associated with them, enabling that advanced analytics, right? So it can be kind of hard because there's a lot of overlap between these different data platforms, right? A lot of them do the same thing, so it's ultimately coming down to the decision of what differentiates them. And that's what leads us to our fourth section, which is the defining measurable evaluations. This is ultimately going to be the foundation of decision making that's going to help us differentiate the different platforms we're working with. So some examples of defining measurable evaluations, what we're going to basically look at are things that we can basically capture through proof of values or POCs to basically add factual information to the decision-making process. So things like performance metrics, right? If we have a use case and we run this process across the different data platforms, what does the processing speed look like? Are we having to include areas of redundancy? How many steps of ETL are incorporated? Integration capabilities relates to how does the data solution plug and play with your existing architecture, right? Do you have the support for the integrations that you're going to need to get data out to your consumers? Data quality, this is looking at the different, whether it's a data governance tool, right? So for cataloging or tracing lineage, or the automation of process, making sure that it's clean and repeatable and uniform across your entire data estate. The other one, total cost of ownership, this is going to be more so what does the cutover cost look like? What does the cost of maintaining this look like? This can be captured through POC metrics, but ultimately you're just trying to understand how expensive it's going to be to make the switch over to this data platform and maintain that as your single source of truth. At a higher level, the bottom three with user experience and adoption, this is going to be more so around, how is my current IT team and my current end users going to feel about the new data platform? Is it going to be an easy switch over? Is there going to be a lot of learning curve with working with the new platform? These are things that we can sort of measure a little bit at a higher level, right? And then reliability and availability. How well does this scale to our busy times of day? How well does this scale to our future growth rates? These are all things that we need to be considering there. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, security and compliance is key for any data platform. So making sure that the data platform aligns with those initiatives and requirements of your organization. So now that we've defined those metrics, now comes time for the fun part. This is where we're going and we're actually building solutions on these different tool sets. And for this part, I'm going to hand it over to AJ to go through a couple of in-depth client use cases. So in terms of this, what we're really looking for with this proof of value process is that there's this constant line of communication. And you need to be thinking about ways that you can leverage the different offerings. So like for Fabric, for example, you get that 60-day free trial. That's a great opportunity to leverage that platform for some POCs as well. But the very important thing is that constant line of communication between the champion and your solution architects and developers, with the ultimate output being a TRD, because that's going to be the foundation and backing. So when leadership comes and says, why did we pick this platform? We have factual evidence in these technical requirements documents that illustrate on the use case how this particular platform performed against our defined and measurable evaluations.
And then, so addressing one of the use cases, for which the solution ended up being Fabric. So it's a D365 FNSE client. They have a process to, the current process that used to get data out is the export to data lake that lands the data in your Azure Data Lake Gen 2 in a CDM or a common data model format in CSV file format. In order to make that user friendly or readable, you need a utility or function in order to translate that data or expose that data in Synapse environment in a SQL view format, right? And then if you want to persist that data for your data warehousing or your data mart needs, you have to take a pipeline, whether it's Azure Data Factory or Azure Synapse pipelines, to take that the data, your history and your incrementals, push it into a persistent storage. It could be SQL database, it could be Snowflake, it could be a Synapse dedicated pool, right? Depending on your volumes, depending on your current investment choices, it was one of those platforms for our clients. And then finally, you have that data surfaced in Power BI from a visualization standpoint. Now, just in this one architecture alone, you see the number of components or the architectural components that you need to create and maintain. So you have a data lake Gen 2, making sure you enable the hierarchical namespace, and then you have the CDM util, which needs to be executed every time you want to export new tables or modules from your D365 into the data lake. You need the serverless workspace or the Synapse workspace with the serverless pool to surface the data for the first time in a user-friendly format. Then you need the data factories to take that data in a controlled manner into a destination. So again, you have different components that need maintenance and monitoring. Now, you also have multiple hops of the data. You're introducing points of failure, but with that export option, that is the architecture, right? Because based on what Microsoft had available at that time, that is the option. You have to have those multiple hops, even though there's multiple points of failure. And then you also replicate the data, literally in multiple areas. You have your full data coming out from D365 for the objects that you picked in your data lake. Now you're taking that data and you're moving it, you're exposing that in your serverless pool. You're taking that data and then you're persisting it for storage in an Azure SQL database. And then finally, you're doing a Power BI import to get that data made available within Power BI for your analysis. Now, depending on your Power BI licensing structure, you may be limited to 8 refreshes a day if you're a Power BI Pro. If you're a Power BI Premium customer, you can have a lot more refreshes with the bigger data set sizes. Now, so these are all, this is the current state, and this is the problem that needed to be addressed or solved as part of the POC. So the proof of value, or in this case, the solution that was built for the client. Microsoft has announced late last year 2 different approaches to get data out from your D365 applications, whether it's FNSE or CE, or any data that gets stored. That data can be made available within Fabric in 2 different ways. It's via Synapse or via Dataverse. So you have 2 different options now to get the data into your Fabric Lakehouse. Now, this is where Microsoft is using the feature of shortcuts. So the data is not physically getting copied over into the Lakehouse. It's either going to stay in your data lake if you go with the Synapse approach, and then from there a shortcut exposes that data in your Fabric Lakehouse. In the second option, which is the Dataverse route, data stays in your Dataverse boundary, but then again, Microsoft has introduced the shortcuts from Dataverse to Fabric. It's actually a 2-way shortcut, so you can have data reflected in Lakehouse from your Dataverse. You can also build applications in Power Apps using the data that's in Fabric. So it's a 2-way integration that Microsoft has created. So without physically having to move the data, other than one-time export to get data out from your D365 application, you have now 2 different ways to analyze that data in the Fabric Lakehouse. Now here's the other key feature that Microsoft has with Fabric is that the cross-database querying. So the clients did end up building a data mart and a data warehouse inside the Fabric data warehouse component, which uses your SQL skills. Now the best part, you don't have to move the data that's getting exposed in your Fabric lakehouse. You use a three-part naming convention, lakehouse.schema name.table name in your SQL, and now you can integrate your raw data sitting in your lakehouse with your, let's say, your dimensions and facts that are sitting in your Fabric warehouse, for your facts and dimensions maintenance. And with the concept of direct lake in near real time, I would say near real time, it's not real time, it's near real time, you can analyze the data, once it's created, whether it's in your warehouse or lakehouse, you can have the data, reported within Power BI through the concept of direct lake. It's also a new concept that Microsoft has introduced. Now, with that approach, for the client, you have seen the number of data hops getting reduced significantly. No more hops between, data lake to a Snowflake or a SQL database, and then ingesting into Power BI. Now, if your data volumes are 500 million rows or less, direct lake works just fine with Power BI. If your volumes are upwards of 500 million, that's when it falls back to the direct query approach. But until then, you have your direct lake approach that Power BI can be used. That you can use with Power BI to interact with the data that's sitting in your Fabric lakehouse or in your warehouse. And this is the second instance. So remember when we said, SSR, your current state. It's very critical that you do that because a lot of times the clients don't know what they've already invested, what they are receiving in terms of the data sets. The example that we talked about, the POS data, the point of sales data coming from your, all the retailers. Turns out, they have EDIs, the electronic data interchange, emails coming in, with some of those attachments, with your sales and inventory information from your retailers directly to some points of contact within the organization on the client side. They didn't know that. Upon further assessing the current state, that's when, upon all the discussions with the retailers directly, we came to know that that solution does exist. Now that's where we relied on the power of again a platform as a solution. So Logic Apps was immediately to the rescue, to start tracking those email addresses that get these those sales and inventory information directly from the retailers. You track that email address, or we talked to the retailers and said, hey, instead of sending it to somebody, send it to this email group, or send it to this specific email address that we are monitoring via Logic Apps. So as soon as an email attachment comes in to that email address, we're able to download that file, and then you can start quickly processing it. So again, knowing that your current state is very important. And simple functionalities like Outlook mail forward. That email from EDI comes to a certain sales rep within the organization. Have an Outlook email forward that was a quick setup to get that sent to that specific email that we're monitoring via Logic Apps. As soon as that email attachment comes in, that files get copied over. And now leveraging the data factory resource within Fabric, we are able to grab all these files and land in your Fabric lakehouse in your raw table structures. And now leveraging the power of warehouse and SQL, you can apply your business rules, you can clean up the data. And if the same sales file comes twice, making sure there's no duplicates around it, you merge your past data with the current data. You can do all of that stuff within the Fabric warehouse using your all familiar SQL. And then finally, they're now able to quickly look at your sales information as well as the inventory information through Direct Lake in Power BI. Now, going back to the previous example, on, if you want to go back to the previous slide. So this customer, again, the reason, one of the advantages that this client had was they were on Power BI Premium. Probably most of you already know that in Power BI Premium, you can use that capacity to run your Fabric workloads. So your execution of your notebooks or those SQL scripts within Fabric data warehouse, you can provide the compute power using the Power BI Premium capacity that the client has already invested. And in that particular case, this example of the client, it's an even interesting scenario. So they are a client and have a parent organization that owns them. The parent organization actually owns the Power BI Premium capacity. And these users have access on their guest user access on the client's tenant or the parent company's tenant. But they have Dynamics application, so their data is coming into their Synapse workspace. But how do we use, again, knowing you're assessing your current state? They talk to the parent company was willing to attach that premium capacity to their Fabric workspace, except the Fabric workspace in a different tenant. Again, the Fabric shortcuts to the rescue. A real life use case where your Synapse data or the data that's sitting in your Synapse Lake database or in your data lake, you can create shortcuts to another tenant, a Fabric workspace in different tenant. And now they are able to surface all those, the D365 tables in the Fabric workspace of the parent company's tenant. And now, because the parent company has that premium capacity, they are able to use that premium capacity to run those workloads. And another Microsoft feature that's coming, or in April, is the region dependency. Now, region is going to be key. When you want to get data out of D365 into your data lake, your Synapse workspace, your data lake, they all have to be in the same environment as your Dataverse. So that means your premium capacity should also be in the same region. So there's so much region dependency that can cause your system or solutions not to work. Microsoft is addressing that in April. They're taking away that region dependency. So irrespective of where your premium capacity is created, whichever region it is, you can still use that to process all your Dynamics data once it's inside your Fabric Lakehouse. So again, that's a new announcement that's coming from Microsoft.
Yeah, and so AJ has just given many examples on areas of proof of value for Fabric in your organization. So what we've done up to this point is we've defined our objectives, we've assessed our current state for these opportunities, measurable evaluations, and then actually applying that and recording our findings. So the next thing to do is sort of assess risk, because this might be a big driving factor for a successful POC test, but it's important to assess risk while you're thinking about data platform. So just for some high-level examples, right, from an integration and compatibility challenges standpoint, from our data platform, what risks do we foresee from a compatibility standpoint with our existing architectures, right? So making sure that the data platform connects, if there's certain lacking in functionalities, that might be a big deciding factor outside of the performance of that, right? We also look at things like migration effort. How expensive is it going to be to make this cutover? How much change does that impact to our technical teams and our business users? So these are just some big high-level things to maybe take back and look as you're going through this process at your own organization. But just to address the use case, right? So against those same risks that were outlined in the previous slide, these are how Fabric addressed that for the current use case that we're looking at, right? So from an integration and compatibility standpoint, what we saw this morning right at the keynote is Fabric's only growing. The amount of connectors and the amount of functionality for trying to support your existing architectures. This is something that's going to only persist, and it's a big win on the Fabric side. From a migration effort, right? When we look at how easy it is to turn Fabric on for premium P1 licensing for Power BI, you can basically start taking action in Fabric to do things beyond reporting just by turning that on, right? And not to mention the shortcut functionality, the mirroring and the mounting that's on the roadmap for Fabric. The real goal of these migration efforts is to not scrap what's already built and just build it in a new tool. It's really to re-leverage and enhance and decrease that complexity. When we look at the bad fit for your organization's skill set, I think the one selling point of Fabric is it's just so flexible in what you can do, right? If you're a Python heavy shop, so very data engineering forward, there's a place in an IDE for you to leverage that. If you are a low-code organization, there's a lot of drag and drop interfaces that allow you to build complex ETLs with very little knowledge of code. When we look at introduction of new inefficiencies, I think through the testaments that AJ outlined in the in the proof of values examples, we see Fabric really decreasing complexity and really trying to decrease the amount of redundant storage, make data easier to access. So that is sort of Fabric's answer to that, right? And as far as vendor roadmap and user adoption, From a vendor roadmap standpoint, I mean, this is the major point of investment for Microsoft Data Platform. So going forward, we're only going to see more and more functionality coming out of this product. And then from a user adoption standpoint, it's very similar. A lot of the same tools that you're probably working in Azure on today are what we'll be working on in Microsoft Fabric. So those who are comfortable in Data Factory, it's going to feel and look very similar when you get into Microsoft Fabric, same with the Power BI experience. So once we've kind of gone through all of this data collection on process and making sure that it's all aligned with our objectives, now comes the part that sort of wraps out the informed decision-making matrix, which is going to be the select and plan, and I'm going to pass it back to Raviv for this one.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. So, as we said, we've gone through all of these steps. We've defined out of all of our objectives. We've assessed our risk. We've run through lots of different analyses and compared lots of different options. And so now we're at that state of selecting our platform. And really, the key thing I want to kind of highlight here is that planning for implementation. Not just jumping right into it, but really think about what is that prioritized roadmap. And a key thing especially with Fabric, is to think about and to make sure that you're planning for it is it doesn't have to be a big bang approach. You can take it with smaller chunks. You can look at it in terms of specific business units or a specific domain. You don't have to do a big bang approach in order to create this roadmap and then move forward with your implementation. And then Ryan's going to just wrap up here with kind of all of this stuff that we just talked about, of all these different proofs of value. What does this really look like in an end state architecture, and how did Fabric sort of solve a lot of these challenges and problems?
Yeah, and so what we want to think about here is the defined objectives that drove our data platform modernization, right? Because a lot of these functionalities that we're going to see here tie back to that. So when we look at increased data accessibility, OneLake and Fabric's Lakehouse really connect the dots. So if your data is dispersed across many different data lakes, if your data is dispersed across many different databases, what Fabric's aiming to do with the OneLake Foundation is unify that all together, increase that accessibility so that workloads built in Fabric can leverage that data faster without the unnecessary movement. When we think about data quality in Microsoft Fabric, the built-in Purview integration enables you to catalog and trace lineage throughout the product. So making sure that data's clean, you know where it's coming from, and you know who the owners of that data are. When we think about those manual Excel files that we're emailing around and consolidating to basically create our data sets, that's no more with Microsoft Fabric with the functionalities of data flows and data factory pipelines. So that automated sort of work stream that you build in Fabric really ensures that data accuracy, so the process is done by a machine the same way every time consistently. And I think this is sort of the big selling point. So with Microsoft Fabric, you gain access with your standard SKU, access to all these AI tools. So whether that's built-in Copilot integration or that's advanced analytics, so machine learning models, I think Fabric creates a great workspace for you to be able to leverage that.
And the other key point of that is that unlike a lot of other platforms and technologies, is that all of that is baked now with Fabric into the same kind of portals and the same kind of interfaces. You're not going out to this area and doing machine learning workloads, and then you're going over here and doing BI workloads, and then you have to grab insights from here and bring them over here. You're trying to do everything unified into kind of one single platform is what you're gaining with what we're seeing with Fabric.
Exactly. And then we look at these, the defined objective of scalability, right? So with the concept of bursting and smoothing in Fabric, it allows you to borrow from the not busy times and apply that compute to your busy times, right? So that's making it more efficient, not leaving compute on the table, and really leveraging that to meet the scalability of your organization. And I think the other big selling point that we've kind of hit home here is, you don't have to scrap what you've already got built on different solutions or platforms, right? The functionality of mirroring your solutions in Databricks, your solutions in Snowflake natively into Fabric really creates a solution that's going to enable you to not have to do rework, but rather derive net new value out of those data solutions in Fabric. And then gone are the days of the individual cost pay-as-you-go for the different components of the architecture. I think if we recall back to AJ's example of the current state where there were 6 different portals to be managed, all with its own individualized billing. I think the big selling point with Fabric is it's now under this comprehensive billing model that you can leverage for a specific compute level that you can use your end-to-end that you can use for your end-to-end analytic work streams.
Okay, and then just sort of to wrap this up, this is just a few key takeaways about, we kind of think back to where we started from around those key objectives, right? These are those same key objectives and kind of Fabric's answer, right? We talked about wanting to have enabled streamlined data access to our business units, so leveraging things like we talked about through shortcuts, through solution mirroring, through OneLake, right? A data platform that's built on data accuracy and data quality, right? So again, by not having to move that data around, being more streamlined in how we actually access data and bring it forward, provides that both not only lineage, but also that foundation for not kind of introducing new data quality areas. We've got a platform, as we said, that now supports advanced analytics, that we don't have to go into other technologies and other places to actually do machine learning workloads, to do AI workload type of thing. And this is why we're here. This is Microsoft's key investment that they're making in the data platform. It's built to scale, and with Fabric, you've got lots of different SKU options to meet your different workloads. It's security and compliance is huge for Microsoft. That was really key to what we talked about before, that it's important that we're not having to spend as much time and effort in administering it, that security and compliance are kind of front and center in the platform itself, and that we, for lack of a better term, have to opt out of those things rather than having it to be something that we've got to turn on and really think about and administer. And then the last thing, is that Fabric really does provide a balance between that high performance computing that we need for a lot of our workloads, but at the same time gives you lots of different options to be able to balance that with the cost side. Ajay or Ryan, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think there are some additional use cases that we've solved or built, especially on the sensor data, predictive maintenance. Again, the power of Direct Lake, have your raw data from your sensors, getting fed into OneLake, and then feed into your machine learning models to predict if the machine's going to exceed the threshold within the next 30 minutes. So that was the use case. To be able to predict, if there's some kind of a maintenance that will be needed, what are the chances of that? And then we color coded that, between 0 to 30%, if there's a chance, you have a certain color, like in a green, and then orange, and then or yellow turning into orange, that says within the next 30 minutes, you can expect some kind of a maintenance request for that particular machine. And then what we have done is we've taken the real-time data, that comes in every 5 seconds, and then put this, the predicted results back into the same OneLake. You can write the results same into OneLake, and now using Power BI Direct Lake, you are taking the real-time data as well as the predicted data, put them together into the same Power BI dashboard, and then with the capabilities, I can tell you what those factors are, that are giving you that that yellow symbol or that the orange symbol that shows that there could be a predicted request coming back. One other solution that we built from the client was around they're worried about the freezer door being open for a while. So event streams, right? The new feature within again Azure Fabric, Microsoft Fabric, lets you they also have a CE dynamic CE application. So what we have done is one, when there are instances of that happening, one creates a ticket, an entry within their CE application. There's a record of all the things that are happening, and if it happens for a while, send an email alert or a text alert if that problem's not resolved to the technician or to the store folks. So that's again a solution that we built using event streams within Microsoft Fabric. So there are different use cases that we're seeing based on what clients area of work or their nature of business. But the options are limitless, and it all the foundation of it is that OneLake, that storage, where you write once and then you access it many times using for different use cases.
And then so this kind of wraps up things for today. That Yeah, we'll be around for a few minutes after this talk. If you want to chat a little bit more about kind of your specific use case, come see us at booth 207. RSM offers a free fabric assessment. If you go to that QR code, that'll take you to a web page that gives some more details about that. Happy to chat with you about that. And then, thank you for sticking with us through this whole thing. RSM's hosting a reception this evening at Top Golf. We'd love to have you guys join us. If you go to that QR code there, you'll be able to RSVP to the reception as well. So appreciate the time with us today, and hope you guys have a wonderful conference.